I fell in love with a man who could have killed me. Some nights, lying in sheets that cost more than every piece of furniture I ever owned combined, I think about that. I think about the contract. The ink that hadn't dried before I started shaking. The 6-month countdown that started ticking in a room I wasn't allowed to leave, across a desk from a man whose eyes held absolutely nothing and absolutely everything. His name was Dante Valderi. If you know that name, you already know why your stomach just dropped. And if you don't, if you've been lucky enough to live in the kind of world where that name is just a name, then let me tell you what it meant in mine. It meant blood. It meant empire. It meant a phone call at 2 in the morning telling me my little brother had 48 hours to live unless I showed up at an address I'd never heard of and said yes to a question I hadn't been asked yet. I said yes. I should tell you I regret it. That's the decent thing to say, right? The thing that makes me sympathetic, the thing that makes you comfortable. But I promised myself that if I ever told this story, really told it, I wouldn't lie. So here's the truth. I signed a contract to become a mafia boss's fake wife for 6 months. And somewhere between the first night and the last, the fake part stopped being true. And the wife part became the only real thing I'd ever been. I'm not proud of that. I'm not ashamed of it either. I'm just honest. But to understand how I got here, you need to know where I started. Before Dante, my life smelled like industrial bleach and reheated coffee. I worked double shifts at a diner off Halsted, the kind of place where the fluorescent lights buzzed like dying insects, and the linoleum was so worn you could see the concrete underneath. My hands were always raw. My back always ached. And every night, I came home to a 1-bedroom apartment where I slept on the couch so my little brother Marco could have the bedroom. He was 21, old enough to be a man, young enough to still be the boy I'd promised my mother I would protect. She'd died when I was 19 and he was 16, and the last thing she said, the very last thing, while the hospital machines beeped their countdown, was take care of your brother. Not take care of yourself, not live your life. Take care of Marco. So I did. I picked up shifts until my vision blurred. I skipped meals so he could eat. I pretended not to notice when he came home later and later, when his eyes got harder and his excuses got thinner. I told myself he was finding his way. Boys need time. He'd figure it out. I was lying. I knew I was lying. But the truth was a door I couldn't afford to open because what was behind it would have destroyed me. And then one night, someone opened it for me. Marco didn't come home on a Tuesday. By Wednesday morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. A voice I didn't recognize, flat, male, bored, said 6 words that stopped my heart. Your brother owes Dante Valderi money. $200,000. Marco had borrowed from people connected to the Valderi family to fund a business that never existed. A desperate, stupid, beautiful lie he told himself to feel like he was becoming something. They gave me an address, a time, and a choice that wasn't a choice at all. I showed up at 11 p.m. to a restaurant in the Gold Coast that had no sign on the door. A man in a black suit opened it before I knocked. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. I followed him through a dining room that was empty and silent, white tablecloths, crystal glasses, the heavy scent of old wood and money, into a back room. And that's where I saw him. Before I saw him, I felt him. Something in the air changed, pressure, temperature, the weight of oxygen itself. The room was large. He made it feel like a closet. Dante Valderi sat behind a mahogany desk like it was a throne. Dark suit, no tie, the top button of his shirt undone. His jaw was cut from something harder than bone. His eyes were the color of black coffee and just as bitter. He looked at me the way you look at a chess piece, calculating where I fit, what I was worth. Sit down, he said. His voice, God, his voice, low, unhurried with the faintest trace of Italian underneath, like the accent was something he'd tried to shed, but it lived too deep. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The room was already silent. I sat, not because he told me to, because my legs had stopped working. You're Marco's sister, he said, not a question. Where is he? He tilted his head, just slightly, like I'd surprised him by speaking. "Alive," he said, "for now. I need to know, have you ever felt someone before you saw them? Like your body recognized danger your mind hadn't met? Tell me in the comments, because that's exactly what happened next." He slid a folder across the desk, black leather. Inside was a contract, real, legal, notarized lines waiting for signatures. 6 months, he said. You play my wife, publicly, convincingly. You attend events, live in my home, wear my ring. At the end of 6 months, your brother's debt disappears. He walks free. You walk free. Everyone goes home. I stared at the pages, the words blurred. Why? My voice came out steadier than I expected. Why do you need a wife? Something flickered behind his eyes. Not warmth. Recognition, maybe. Like he hadn't expected me to ask that. Like most people just obeyed. My grandfather controls the old guard of this family. He's dying. And he's decided that the empire passes only to a married man. Tradition. The word came out like a blade. I need a wife before his heart stops beating. You need your brother alive. This is efficient. Efficient, I repeated. You're talking about my life. I'm talking about a transaction. He leaned forward. His cologne hit me dark, expensive, layered with something underneath that was just him. 6 months. Then you go back to your life, better than your life. I'll make sure of it. And if I say no? The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. Then Marco's debt is collected, he said softly. The traditional way. My hands were shaking under the table. I pressed them into my thighs until my knuckles ached. You're a monster. Yes, no flinch, no defense. Just the word settled between us like a stone. But I'm a monster who's offering you a door, the only door you have. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the folder at his face and walk out and call the police and pretend the world worked the way it was supposed to. But the world doesn't work the way it's supposed to. It works the way men like Dante Valderi make it work. I have conditions, I said. Both his eyebrows rose, just barely. The ghost of something that might have been respect crossed his face. I'm listening. I see Marco, regularly. I verify he's safe with my own eyes. And you never, never touch me without my permission. He studied me. 5 seconds. 10. His gaze moved across my face like he was reading a language he hadn't seen before. Agreed, he said. Anything else? Yes, when this is over, you forget I exist. Something shifted in his expression, something I couldn't name. We'll see, he said. I signed the contract at 11:47. My hand didn't shake. I made sure of it. Here's my question, and I really want your answer. When someone sees the real you, the parts you've hidden from everyone, and they don't run, is that love? Or is that just two broken people recognizing each other? Tell me. The way he said, "We'll see," threw me back. Suddenly I was 19, standing in the doorway of a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and ending. My mother's hand in mine, so thin I could feel every bone. Marco outside, packing, too scared to come in. He's soft, she whispered. Her eyes were already somewhere else. Too soft for this world. You're not. You're like me. You'll bend before you break. Mama. Promise me. I promised. What else could I do? She was dying and asking me to live for 2. The machine flatlined at 3:12 a.m. I held her hand for 11 minutes after. Then I walked out, found Marco crumpled against the hallway wall, pulled him to his feet and said, "It's you and me now." I was 19. I became a mother overnight. And I never once asked myself what I wanted, because wanting things was a luxury for people who didn't have someone to keep alive. But that was then, and this was now. And Dante Valderi was watching me sign away 6 months of my life with eyes that saw too much. The first week in his penthouse was a war of silence. He gave me an entire wing, marble floors heated from below, a closet filled with clothes that fit perfectly, which meant he'd had me measured without my knowledge, and that thought made my skin crawl. And burn, both. On the 7th night, he found me standing in the kitchen at 2 a.m., eating cereal from the box, because the refrigerator was full of food I didn't recognize, and I refused to ask for help. He leaned against the doorframe, watching. "You can use the kitchen," he said. "It's your home." Something in me snapped. "It's not my home." I turned to face him. "This is a cage with heated floors. You bought me, Dante. You dressed me up and put me in a room and told me to smile at your grandfather and play pretend. Don't stand there and call it home." He didn't move, didn't blink. "You want to know what home is?" My voice cracked, but I would not let it break. "Home is a couch I slept on for 3 years so my brother could have a bed. Home is bleach under my fingernails and a paycheck that doesn't cover rent. Home is holding my mother while she died and promising to take care of a boy who grew up into a man who got himself $200,000 in debt to you." The silence that followed was different, full. "I'm not your wife," I said. "I'm not your accessory. I'm a woman paying a debt that isn't mine to save the only family I have left. If you want this to work, you will look at me and see that, not whatever fantasy makes this easier for you." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You didn't eat dinner." "What?" "Tonight, the event. You didn't eat. You haven't eaten a real meal since you got here." I stared at him. "Sit down," he said, but it was different this time, not a command, an offering. He cooked. At 2 a.m. in a $10,000 suit, the head of a criminal empire made me pasta with garlic and olive oil and said nothing while I ate. And I hated him for it, because cruelty I could fight. Kindness was a weapon I had no defense against. 3 weeks in, the threat got a name. Nico Valderi, Dante's uncle. Older, leaner, with the kind of smile that made you check your pockets. Nico wanted the empire, had been positioning for it since before Dante's father died. And now, watching Dante parade a new wife in front of the old man, Nico smelled blood. I came home from a fitting, dresses for an upcoming gala, to find the foyer window shattered. Glass on the marble like scattered teeth. A single photograph on the floor. Marco, taken from across a street, a red circle drawn around his face. No note, none needed. Dante found me standing over it. He took one look at the photo, and something terrible moved through his expression. Not anger, something colder. The calculated fury of a man deciding exactly how much violence was required. "He's testing me," Dante said quietly. "He's threatening my brother. He's threatening us. Marco is how he gets to you. You are how he gets to me." The way he said it, "You are how he gets to me," I almost missed it. Almost. That night, I couldn't sleep. I found Dante in his study, staring at a glass of whiskey he hadn't touched. "You don't drink it," I said from the doorway. "I've noticed, you pour it, you hold it, you never drink." He looked up. For a moment the mask slipped. "My father drank, every night. Then he made decisions, bad ones." He set the glass down. "The ritual reminds me what I refuse to become." He told me about his father. Not everything, I don't think he tells anyone everything, but enough. How his father beat his mother. How Dante, at 14, stepped between them and took a blow that broke his jaw. How his mother left the next day and never came back. How his father drank himself dead within a year. His voice was different. Not soft, that would have been wrong on him, but unguarded, like he'd forgotten to lock the door and I'd walked in. "We're both paying debts that aren't ours," I said. He looked at me, really looked at me, and I felt it, the shift. The moment we stopped being captor and captive and became something I didn't have a word for. "Yes," he said, "we are. If you're still here, and I hope you are, I need to thank you, because I've never told anyone this part. Hit that like button if you're feeling what I felt. Share this with someone who knows what it is to want something dangerous. And subscribe, because what happened next is the part that still keeps me up at night." It happened on the balcony. Month 2. After the gala where I'd played his wife so convincingly that his grandfather clasped my hands and called me Figlia, daughter, and I'd felt something crack open in my chest that I couldn't push back closed. Dante found me outside, still in the gown, shivering against the railing. The city sprawled below us like a circuit board, all light and distance. "You're cold," he said. "I'm fine." He took off his jacket and placed it over my shoulders. His hands lingered. 1 heartbeat, 2. I should have stepped away. The door was right there. He wasn't stopping me. That was the worst part. He never stopped me. He never forced proximity. He kept his word. He didn't touch me without permission. Which meant that every time I leaned closer, every time I let his hand rest a moment too long, every time I breathed in that scent of his, dark and expensive, and underneath it something warm, something human, that was my choice. Your grandfather thinks this is real, I whispered. My grandfather is a perceptive man. I turned. He was close, too close. The city behind him made him look like something carved out of the night. Is it, I asked, real? He lifted his hand, slow, giving me time to stop him. His thumb traced my jaw. My entire body lit up like a fuse. You tell me, he said. I kissed him, not the other way around. Me. I leaned up and pressed my mouth to his and felt the world tilt on its axis. He kissed me back like he'd been waiting, like he'd been holding his breath for weeks, and I was oxygen. I didn't know it then, but that kiss would cost me everything, and nothing. Is it still a choice if your body makes it before your mind catches up? Is surrender weakness, or is it the bravest thing you can do when you've been fighting your whole life? I'm still trying to figure it out. Help me. Month 4. I had stopped counting the days on the contract. That should have been my warning. I woke to Dante's phone ringing at 3 a.m., the specific ring, the one that meant blood. He answered, listened, and his face went blank. Not calm, empty. The kind of empty that precedes violence. Marco's gone, he said. Nico had taken him, not to hurt him, not yet. As leverage. A message delivered through one of Dante's own men, a traitor bought with Nico's money. Hand over the empire, nephew, or the boy dies slowly. I couldn't breathe. The room spun. Everything I'd sacrificed, the contract, the pretending, the falling in love I'd sworn I wouldn't do, all of it meaningless if Marco died in a warehouse somewhere with a bag over his head. I'm going to get him back, Dante said. He was already dressing. Shoulder holster. Gun I'd seen 100 times and pretended I hadn't. The cold weight of it visible even from across the room. Take me with you. No. He's my brother. And you're he stopped. The word hung between us unfinished. My wife, my woman, my weakness. If you leave me here, I will walk out that door and find him myself. You know I will. He stared at me. The muscle in his jaw ticked. If I take you, he said, and something happens to you, then it happens to me. My choice, my risk. He crossed the room in 3 strides. His hands cupped my face. His forehead pressed to mine. He was shaking. Dante Valderi, the man who commanded an empire without raising his voice, was shaking. If I lose you, he whispered, there is nothing left of me worth saving. Then don't lose me, I said, and let me help you. What would you have done? Not what you should do. I know what I should have done. What would you actually do if staying meant danger but leaving meant never feeling anything this real again? Be honest. Dante made a call, then another, then a third. I watched him dismantle his own kingdom in 20 minutes. He gave up territory, 3 districts, millions in revenue traded to the Bellanova family for their soldiers and their silence. He burned an alliance with the Corsetti family by revealing Nico's involvement in their father's death, a secret he'd kept as insurance for years, now spent like currency. He called his grandfather directly and told him the truth, all of it, that I was not really his wife, that the marriage was a contract, that Nico was staging a coup. He set fire to every lie, every strategy, every weapon he'd stockpiled, because the only thing left that mattered was getting Marco back alive. His grandfather's response crackled through the phone, old and iron-hard. Then make it real, Dante. Make her your wife, and end this. Dante looked at me across the room, his empire in ruins, his secrets exposed, his power halved in a single night. Why? I asked. My voice was barely a sound. He looked at me like I was asking why he needed air. Because you're not a contract, he said. You never were. The warehouse was on the south side. Industrial. The kind of place that smelled like rust and futures ending. Dante's men moved in first. I heard the gunshots from the car where he'd made me promise to stay. I lasted 90 seconds. I found Marco tied to a chair in a back room, bloodied but alive. His eyes went wide when he saw me. "What are you doing here?" he rasped. "Saving you, like always." I was cutting the zip ties with a knife I'd taken from Dante's car when the door opened behind me. Nico, silver-haired, smiling, a gun hanging loose at his side like an afterthought. "The fake wife," he said. "How touching." "The desperate uncle," I replied. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steel, my mother's steel. How predictable. His smile flickered. "You know what Dante gave up tonight?" I stepped in front of Marco, between my brother and the barrel of a gun. "Territory, alliances, secrets he's kept for years, all for this, for us. A waitress and her stupid brother. That's how much we're worth to him. How much are you worth to anyone, Nico?" It was the hesitation that killed him. Not literally. That was Dante, appearing in the doorway behind Nico like a shadow given form, his voice cutting the air like a blade. "Put it down, Uncle." Nico turned, and in that turn, in that half-second of divided attention, I grabbed Marco's chair and swung it into Nico's arm. The gun clattered. Dante's men flooded in. It was over in seconds. The loudest sound was my own heartbeat. Dante's eyes found mine across the chaos. I was shaking, bleeding from a cut on my arm I didn't remember getting. He looked at me like I was everything. Afterwards, the car. His driver taking us somewhere I didn't register because Dante's hands were on my face, and his eyes were checking every inch of me for damage, and I was crying. I don't remember deciding to cry. It just happened. The adrenaline collapsed, and everything I'd been holding, years of holding, came flooding out. And he's this man who had killed people, who commanded an empire, whose name made grown men go quiet. He held me like I was something that could break. Like I was something worth keeping whole. "I can't lose you," he said. His voice cracked. I had never heard it crack before. "You have me," I said, and I meant it. God help me, I meant it. "You've had me since the poster at 2 a.m. I was just too scared to admit it." He pulled back, looked at me. His eyes were wet. Dante Valdery's eyes were wet. "The contract," he said. "I'll tear it up. Tonight you're free. Marco is free. You don't owe me anything." "I know." "Then why are you still here?" I touched his face, the jaw that had been broken at 14, the man who poured whiskey to remind himself what he wouldn't become. "Because I'm not staying for the contract," I said. "I'm staying for you." "I'm dangerous." "I know." "I can't change what I am." "I know that too." "Then why?" "Because you made me pasta at 2 a.m. because you kept your word. Because you burned your empire to the ground for a waitress and her brother. Because when you look at me, I feel like I exist. Like I'm not invisible anymore." He kissed me, not like the balcony, not careful, not testing. This kiss was broken open, raw, tasting like salt and blood, and the terrifying honesty of two people who had stopped fighting everything. "Stay," he whispered. "I'm staying." The word felt like a door closing, or maybe opening. I couldn't tell anymore. I wasn't sure it mattered. "Do you think I made the right choice?" I change my answer depending on the day. Some mornings I'm certain, some nights I'm not. What do you think? I woke up in his bed for the first time, without a contract hanging over us. The light came through those massive windows. The city spread out below like something you could own if you were brave enough or broken enough. His arm was across my waist. Heavy, warm, possessive even in sleep. I traced the scar on his knuckle, the one from the night his jaw broke. He stirred. "You're starring," he murmured. "You're still here." He opened one eye. Where would I go? "I don't know. I keep expecting to wake up." He pulled me closer, his lips against my forehead. "This is the part where you stop expecting the worst." "I don't know how to do that." "I know," he said. "I'll teach you." Marco was safe. Recovering at a private facility Dante had arranged, not as a debt, not as leverage, but because he said your family is my family now and meant it in a way that made my chest ache. That was a year ago. 12 months, 4 seasons, a lifetime folded into calendar pages. Marco is clean now, working at a restaurant, a real one, front of house, learning the business the honest way. He calls me every Sunday. He calls Dante on Wednesdays. I don't ask what they talk about. Some doors are better left closed. But Marco laughs now, and that's a sound I'd pay any price to keep hearing. Dante's grandfather died in the spring, peacefully in his sleep with a photograph of his grandson's wedding on the nightstand. A real wedding. Small. Just us and Marco and a priest who didn't ask questions. I wore a white dress that cost more than my old apartment. Dante's hands shook when he slipped the ring on my finger. The real one, not the prop from the contract. Nico is gone. I don't ask where. I don't want to know. That's one of the things I've learned. There are rooms in Dante's world I don't enter. Not because he forbids it. Because some doors, once opened, change what you see when you look in the mirror. Last Tuesday, I drove past the diner where I used to work. Same buzzing lights. Same cracked linoleum visible through the window. A woman inside was wiping down tables, her shoulders curved with the same exhaustion I used to carry. I sat in the car for a long time, not because I missed it, because I wanted to remember who I was before, to honor her. The woman who slept on couches and skipped meals and kept her brother alive through sheer, stubborn will. She deserved to know it would be worth it, all of it. We are not a fairy tale. Dante still comes home some nights with a jaw clenched so tight I can hear his teeth. There are phone calls he takes in rooms I don't enter. There are mornings he has already gone before I wake, and the only evidence he was there is the indent in the pillow and the coffee he left on the nightstand. Still warm, always still warm. He is not safe. He will never be safe. The world he lives in doesn't allow it. But last week, I found him in the kitchen at 2 a.m. making pasta. Garlic and olive oil, 2 plates. Couldn't sleep, I asked. He looked up, and he smiled. Not the smile he gives business associates, sharp, controlled, calculated. A real one, small, private, just for me. I was waiting for you, he said. That's what we are. 2 people who find each other at 2 a.m. when the world goes quiet. 2 people who know exactly what the other is, the darkness and the light and the bloody, complicated everything in between, and choose it anyway. Every single night, we choose it. So that's my story. The story of how I went from a woman sleeping on her own couch to the wife of the most dangerous man I've ever known. How I signed a contract under threat and stayed by choice. How I looked at the blood on his hands and held them anyway. I know what he is. I have always known. The empire, the violence, the rooms I don't enter and the questions I don't ask. I see all of it. I stay anyway. You're judging me. I can feel it. That's okay. I judged myself too for a long time. In the shower, in the car, in the quiet moments before sleep when you're too tired to lie to yourself. What am I doing? Who have I become? What would my mother think? But here's what I've decided. My mother told me to take care of Marco. She didn't tell me to stop living. She didn't tell me to be small, to be invisible, to refuse the kind of love that terrifies you because it's the only kind that's real. Judge me if you need to. I stopped judging myself a long time ago. There are different kinds of safety in this world, different kinds of love, the clean kind that makes sense on paper, and the kind that burns everything down and builds something new from the ashes. I chose the second kind. I would choose it again. Some people are meant for ordinary love. I am not one of them. And now I want to hear your story. Have you ever loved someone dangerous? Have you ever stayed when everyone told you to leave? Have you ever found home in a person who scared you? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. Your story matters, especially the dark parts, especially the parts you've never told anyone. If this touched something inside you, please like it. Share it with someone who understands, someone who knows what it is to love in the dark. Subscribe so you never miss a story. Until next time, stay brave, stay dangerous, stay honest.